All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Angela with Sunfish. Welcome to Just Keep Swimming, our channel where you can learn all things about assisted reproductive journeys. So today I'm delighted to be here with my dear friend, Jen Rachman, who is the manager of intended parent support at Circle Surrogacy, one of the largest surrogacy agencies in the world. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you for having me, Angela. I love the name to keep on swimming. That's perfect. It's so great.
Thank you. Yeah, we love all fish puns here at Sunfish. So Jen has an incredible background. Not only is she a mother through assisted reproduction, but she's also been fundamental in supporting the intended parent community at Circle for many years. We'll get to hear a whole lot about her and her background. But first, just to set the scene for our listeners, Jen, what is happening at Circle today?
Oh, so many things. Circle is, as you said, we're one of the oldest and largest surrogacy agencies in the world. And so we had a recent milestone of 3,100 children born in our program, which is amazing. I always like to tell people that my son is 539 on that list, which means there's like 2,600 children, walking around now in his 11 years, which is absolutely amazing. A lot of growth, a lot of intended parents that we're able to help and support in this process. So we're constantly looking at ways to better do that. So our history, our longevity behind us, I think certainly supports as many folks as we can, help grow their families.
Incredible. I personally, as many of our viewers know, used to work at Circle as well. So it's really exciting to see all the growth, even in the few years since I've left the company. I know it's really hard to pick your favorite child, but would love to hear one of your favorite family success stories.
So I am a cancer survivor, and that's what led me to go down the path of surrogacy myself. And so when I have the opportunity to connect with other cancer survivors, those stories always really just hit home with me for personal reasons. So my favorite story as of late, because they happen every day. So I'm grateful that these are not, uncommon scenarios. But this particular family had one child that they carried on their own. And then right after the birth of their first child, the intended mother was diagnosed with breast cancer and led to a whole series of, scary, treatment and surgeries and taking care of herself. But they really wanted to grow their family. They envisioned having more children and didn't want to let cancer derail that plan. And so they were able to do one egg harvest before she started treatment that would ultimately make her infertile. They got one embryo. It wasn't a very strong embryo. And in fact, the doctors some of them were reluctant to even use it because it wasn't a strong embryo, but they found a doctor that would. They found a surrogate that wanted to give them their one opportunity because that was it. And now the surrogate is pregnant and she's due any moment just after the new year. So I know they're waiting to welcome their second child through surrogacy that they really didn't think was even such a small chance of happening. So those little miracles are just such a blessing to be able to witness. So that's my favorite
That
story
is
as of late.
that is so beautiful. I'm getting teary-eyed. I mean, we all know the odds are really difficult as you go through this process. So it truly is a miracle when you hear that one egg, that one embryo actually making it. So I'm sure you'll get to see some baby photos soon.
Oh my God, I can't wait. Can't wait.
So you have an incredible background. You mentioned you're a mom through surrogacy and egg donation. Tell us a little bit about your journey. What were the most memorable parts?
Oh, it's so hard to quickly capture them. I remember when we first met our surrogate, the awkwardness of that and seeing her in person for the first time, going up to her and saying, can I give you a hug? Is that okay? We've just met. You're about to carry our child potentially. And those moments of, yeah, I'm a hugger. Are you a hugger? Yeah, let's go in. And because we wanted to show her how much we appreciated her just right from the jump. And then moments of, come into the room when they were doing the embryo transfer, which I didn't expect to witness or to take part in, but she wanted to share that experience with us. And in hindsight, looking back, like what an amazing opportunity. Again, this new relationship forming, doing these incredibly intimate things. And then, of course, our son's birth, right? I mean, like, doesn't get better than that. So much buildup and anticipation and want over so many years for him to finally be here. So I have vivid memories of that delivery room and what it was like to see him for the first time and hold him for the first time. And again, showing our surrogate as much appreciation as we can for helping us, helping him bring him to us.
Incredible. I'm sure you'll absolutely never forget that moment. I know you're a licensed clinical social worker at Circle, and you mentioned some of the awkward moments that can come up as you kind of navigate this unique relationship with your surrogate. Um, can you share a little bit more about what it means to be a licensed clinical social worker and how you support intended parents? Why is that important?
Yeah, so my background before working at Circle, I've always been a social worker and I worked with children and families in different settings. And I think that that background certainly helped kind of set the stage for me in terms of how to best support this group. I work mainly with intended parents. I know we have other social workers at Circle that work and support surrogates, but for me, supporting intended parents to be able to really look at them as a whole experience. They're not coming to surrogacy typically just right off the bat. Many, especially our heterosexuals, are coming in with a lot of steps behind them to get here, and just really taking the time to understand their experiences, to sit with them, to support them, and to support them in their journey ahead. I think my background and my education certainly helps me do that from a different lens than other folks at Circle, working in different departments and from different perspectives of what this journey looks like. So I think it's really allowed me to be not only my clinical background, but also my personal background to hopefully be able to best support those going through this process.
Incredible. Yes. And I've actually had the honor to listen to you have some of those coaching sessions as Circle has rolled out a number of intended parent support groups regionally. So
Mhm.
I remember as we've done this work together, many questions that will come up are things that you already touched on, like what is the first interaction with my surrogate supposed to be like? Should I get her a gift? What should I do if I'm in the delivery room with her? How is that going to work? So what are some of the types of questions that you get from intended parents as you do this work? And what are some of the things that might cause them stress or anxiety as they're starting off the process?
Oh my gosh, so much. Because I talk to folks right off the bat, right? So, right, they're coming in the door, they're new, some are not very educated about what this looks like, some are really overwhelmed at the concept of it. So, a lot of questions about what does the connection with her look like? How do I develop a trust in this person that I don't know? How much support do we get from the agency? What does it cost? How do we pay? Do the costs fluctuate? What can we expect? They're looking to get as much information as they possibly can right from the jump about what can they anticipate? Where are the pitfalls or the challenges that people face in a process? So my job really to try to get them as emotionally prepared as they can possibly be for the unpredictable elements of this process, because as much as we can set the stage and do all the assessment and make sure we find this amazing carrier, there's still elements that are not predictable, and I think kind of navigating those elements of it can be really stressful, especially in the onset, when I first talk to folks starting this process.
That completely makes sense. It really is a journey. We always say that to intended parents, and it does require a lot of trust and being willing to perhaps change your plan as you go along. So do you have just a main number one tip if someone's thinking about starting a surrogacy journey? I'm sure it's hard to drill it down to just one thing, but what would
Just one,
your
I would say, be patient. Be patient with yourself, be patient with the process, be patient with your surrogate. She's here to help you. She's not here to harm your child. People have fears about all sorts of irrational ideas about what they think their surrogate might do or not do. And so just be, the process takes time and energy and money, and there's a lot investing in this process. So just be patient.
You mentioned cost a couple of times, which is obviously why Sunfish works with your organizations. We're one of the main partners that helps people financially plan and obtain financing and loans for going through surrogacy. So We've spoken with one of your other colleagues already about how much the journey costs, about $200,000 or more, depending on what all is included, egg donor, etc. We often see people spending a really long time on the financial planning side of the journey, and Sunfish can help people kind of break that journey into phases to make it a little more manageable. What do you see as the main reasons that people delay their journey or maybe don't even get started?
I think there's emotional readiness and financial readiness. So emotional readiness, I think that there are some that will reach out and learn about the process, and maybe they'll say, well, I'm not ready for those steps yet. Maybe they're still working on their own fertility journey, or perhaps they're just not ready to open themselves up to this experience. So I think being emotionally ready to accept that this is the best path or the right path to move forward. I think people come into that in different phases and different timing for themselves. And then financial readiness. I think that a lot of folks see the price tag or the overwhelming cost that surrogacy can be, and they just might discard it just based on that. I'm never going to be able to pull money together like that. Where do I get that lump sum of money? And so I think they get overwhelmed not learning enough about what their options are to help them, that there are ways to figure this out. I'm living proof of that. We did not, my husband and I, not high earners. We did not have the ability to pull funds together and have that liquid money just available. And I think that, knowing your resources and knowing that there's ways to figure it out and there's support out there, I think is tremendously helpful, but can really be a roadblock for some.
That's really well said. And one of the reasons we love getting involved in people's journeys at the very beginning, it can seem really daunting or seem like maybe I'm going to need 5 years to save this up. But there are a lot of resources available, including grants, obviously loans that we help with. And sometimes people might have benefits or resources through their employers, for example, that they're not aware of. So I think reaching out to a group like Sunfish early on and having great support from an agency like Circle can really help people move their journey up and start sooner than they might otherwise think. And your team is obviously incredible at supporting the emotional readiness and helping to make sure that everyone, both intended parents and their surrogates, are really ready to move forward. So let's fast forward a little bit and talk about what it's like after the journey. You now have a son who's 11, and I would love to just hear, how do you talk to your son about how your family was built?
Well, I get that question all the time. People are interested and curious. And we've just always taken a perspective of openness from his youngest ages that we can remember having conversations about. It started as really basic, educating him about different types of families and creating an awareness that families are built in different ways, reading books, the children's books about different types of families, and then reading specific children's books about surrogacy. There's a lot of animal themed books out there. I know Circle, we always give our intended parents a list to have, so they're ready for those steps. But I think just being prepared to be open with him from the very beginning and not really making it a big deal, even though it was such a big deal to go through this process, to convey to him that it was his experience was a special one because it was out of love and desire for folks to help each other. And so we've just always taken it one thing at a time. The questions continue to evolve to this day, even at 11. His understanding of his birth story and how he came to be and what he kind of focuses on changes as he understands more and ages. But I will say it's been really positive. It's been really easier than I expected when I had the fears about what was this actually going to look like. Kids are amazingly adaptable and receptive. And if you are positive about how they came into the world, then they are going to follow with the same, open heart that you present to them.
That absolutely makes sense. And it's really incredible what a community exists around this process. I think when I talk to intended parents, they don't often realize, you mentioned there's books and resources available to help educate kids. In addition, I know Circle helps bring together a community of parents and kids that are all a part of this family building journey. So it can be really actually a beautiful and inclusive process, I think, when I see families like you and your son getting to meet others who also were born through surrogacy and seeing all of the different stories and literature to kind of normalize and just make them feel like, hey, this is just one option to build my family. So that's wonderful that you've been able to provide so many resources to your son.
Yeah, and I think he'll do the same for others. He's getting to the age now where he's sharing his story with other people, his friends, his world. I hope that it just opens the eyes of our next generation, that to be more inclusive and more aware than hopefully our generations were.
I hope so too. That's incredible. He's paving the way. So as you talk to people who are starting this journey and are in the shoes that you once were in, what advice do you give people who are feeling nervous about surrogacy or egg donation?
That it's okay to be nervous. It's understandable to be nervous. There's a lot of different components and parts to this process. And I think especially in the onset, it can feel really overwhelming. But to trust yourself, trust your own decision making as you establish your providers, right? Whether it's an agency, Sunfish to help with financing, an IVF doctor to help medically, you're making those decisions, and there is something empowering in that. Those you're kind of putting all your ducks in a row and identifying who are the appropriate supports that I need to help me navigate this process, and trusting your gut, that same gut response you'll have when you match with your surrogate and how you feel about that connection with her. So trust that. It can feel really overwhelming and a sense of powerlessness when you feel you're giving up a lot of control to others, but don't underestimate how much control you have, even about your own involvement in this process, about the connection you have with your surrogate. All that is, I think, really like the cornerstone of this entire experience. And you have absolute control over what that looks like for you. So I think just trust that, trust who you decide to partner with in this process, and know that what you put into it, you'll get back, tenfold.
That's great advice. And you're right, there are a lot of components that you can have control over. So let's talk a little bit about the medical side. When you're picking an IVF clinic, so that's the place where your embryos would be created and then implanted in your surrogate, there's about 500 clinics throughout the US. How do you advise people as to pick the right clinic and doctor for them?
I know it's another personal decision, right? And when folks come on board at Circle, some have a doctor they trust already, some don't. And that's the other, kind of key component that you need in this process to help support your plans. So I always say, start with what you know. So whether it's getting guidance from an agency, getting guidance from your insurance provider, and start there, and use that as kind of a bouncing off point to do your own research and make your own judgments and feelings. My best advice is always interview at least two doctors, because they all differ in styles and personalities, in cost structures. So I think they're all not created equal, even though the technology for IVF has improved so much that you have amazing success rates, right? When you have a wonderful, provider. But knowing the little differences between the agencies, between the IVF providers, I think it is, only you can kind of tease out what feels like the right path. So I always say start with guidance from others, and it could be word of mouth, it could be Google reviews online, it could be a friend that used a provider that really trusted their doctor. People get led, I think, to different IVF doctors in different ways, but definitely do a comparison. Don't just take that recommendation, compare to somebody else and make sure it's the right fit for you.
That makes complete sense to me. There's a lot of differences in terms of the size of the clinic, how many doctors work there, whether or not you're going to see your doctor in every visit or a whole team. So talking to a couple is wonderful advice. And I think it really does come down to that feeling of where you feel most comfortable. So that makes sense to me. Okay, just a couple closing questions here. You've been in this industry now for a really long time. What do you wish more people knew about surrogacy and egg donation?
I wish that folks knew that there's some really beautiful things to come from this process if you're open to it. I think people get really overwhelmed by, again, as we've shared before, the unpredictabilities of it, the costs of it. How do you best prepare yourself for this? And I think just knowing that if you come to accept that this is the right path for you to build your family, that you will absolutely get there. It's just a matter of, the pace of it, the timing of it, those are the factors that can really be frustrating at times. But staying, focused on your goal. Back to my case that I mentioned before about the breast cancer survivor, that resilience that people can show, knowing that their goal is to grow their family. This is just a different way to grow a family than some other folks might have navigated. And so if you're open to it, you'll absolutely get there. I think you just have to question, are you open to it? And do you feel ready for it?
That really resonates. And I think one other area that I often hear from families who go through this process is their kids just feel so loved and so wanted, and they know that so many people made an effort to bring them into the world. So it might not be your first choice or your initial plan of how you're building your family, but in all of the journeys that I've had the pleasure of working on and seeing through to the finish line, there's such an added layer of joy and happiness that it can come into the world with these babies. So that really makes sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much good to come from it if folks are open to it.
100%. So as we close up, you obviously have been with Circle for many years now and seen the company grow so much. What are a couple of the things that make Circle unique as a surrogacy agency?
Well, it's interesting. I get that question a lot. What differentiates Circle from other groups? And if you ask all of us on our team, we'll probably all give you different answers, which is pretty interesting. So I think what speaks to a lot of people today, which didn't exist when we started with Circle, 13 years ago, is that we have a secure and fixed cost element to our process. And so for folks who are unsure about how much do I have to spend on this experience, it allows folks to be financially prepared for what to expect. And I think that security has led to many more folks being able to be prepared for what lies ahead. Now, as the social worker in me, I always focus on support. And so what speaks to me is the fact that we are a larger, robust team at Circle. We have so many different specialties amongst our group, and one of which is offering, chances for folks to connect, that you mentioned before about our community support element. And that works on both sides of this coin. You have surrogates who get support from their social worker that they can connect with, say, a mentor as a surrogate, or in their Facebook group. There's so many different ways for surrogates to connect with what works for them and what's helpful to them. And then for the intended parents, similarly have a chance to connect. We have a Facebook group for IPs. We have virtual meets on a regular basis throughout the month. We have in-person meets if you're able to be near a city where we have office spaces and communities established. And so we love to offer both sides additional supports that I don't think other agencies have the ability to do. And that always speaks to me, because I hope that folks don't feel alone in this process. They might not know anyone in their own personal life that's ever walked this path before. And so being able to let them know that they are able to connect with others that are also having similar experiences, I think is amazingly valuable.
I'm sure anyone listening to this can tell that you and the rest of the Circle team just bring so much passion and love and care to the process, and both to the intended parents and the surrogates that you support. So it's really clear from hearing the way you talk about supporting this community and helping to build this community. I know, having seen many, many intended parents go through the Circle process, that they're in great hands with your team. Last question to wrap up that I always like to ask. Obviously, in the decades that you've been working in this industry, things have changed and evolved quite a bit. What about the future of assisted reproduction and surrogacy most excites you as you look forward?
Oh, so many things. I mean, I've watched trends happen. I mean, I've been working in the field for 10 years, and it has been amazing, the growth, the changes, the improvements. But looking forward, I think accessibility, to this, and being open to the fact that that this process is more accepted than ever before. I think when I started working in the field, when I would ask intended parents, who have you shared, your plans with, or, have you let your loved ones know what you're embarking on? Many, if not most, would say, no, not yet. We're going to wait. We're not sure how they'll react, or they don't know a lot about surrogacy. And when I ask that question today, it's a very different answer. Most folks are open. They've shared with at least their, closest loved ones. They intend to be open with their children. I used to get a lot of answers where folks were unsure about whether they would ever tell their children about their birth story. They were fearful about whether that could possibly cause psychological, emotional damage. And I think we've all learned that that's not true. And being open and allowing your child to know their story is helpful for everybody. So I think the future is hopefully allowing more and more openness. Even just an example, like egg donation, for example, has gone from mainly anonymous to having a lot more options to know donors. I think it's just one example of more awareness and more accessibility. And hopefully, more folks will, with that openness, come to feel, comfortable embarking on this path.
I really share your enthusiasm for the continued kind of normalization and destigmatization of this process. I think that's so, so important. Not just surrogacy, but talking about IVF, egg freezing for your own personal use, egg donors, like you mentioned. So I think our industry is really headed in a great direction where this just becomes a very common way to build families, and hopefully companies like Sunfish providing that financial support can make this a lot more inclusive for more and more families to be able to afford too. So it is such a pleasure to see you, Jen. Thank you so, so much. Your passion and knowledge and experience are such a gift to people going through this journey. So it's always such an honor to be able to chat with you. I'm really excited to share this with our viewers on Just Keep Swimming. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for putting this information out there. I hope that it reaches folks and allows them to hopefully move forward with their dream of parenthood. So appreciate you allowing folks to gather this information. So thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.